everyone, and welcome to Family Law Fridays presented by Florida Women's Law Group. My name is Jadlyn Fleischer, and I'm a legal intern here at Florida Women's Law Group. Family Law Fridays is designed to be a resource for all women with any type of family law issue. Today, we'll be continuing our 7-part series, Suffering in Silence. We will be discussing Part 4, which is domestic violence. Now, before we get started, I would like to give you some information about our host, Heather Quick. Heather is the founder and CEO of Florida Women's Law Group, which is a family law firm that advocates for women in North Florida. The firm educates and empowers women on their rights and the law so they can find the strength to endure the process and end up better financially and emotionally. She has been a licensed Florida attorney for the past 20 years, with the majority of her practice being in family law. Please join me in welcoming Heather Quick to Family Law Fridays.
Thank you, JD, and welcome everyone. Happy to be here today and continuing on in this series. Thank you as well for the feedback we have been receiving lately and the questions, which just at least show me that we are touching on relevant issues, and we're touching on issues that matter to you, and hopefully answering questions that you are seeking answers for. And as always, one of my goals in doing these Family Law Fridays is to bring up relevant topics and help begin the conversation around some things that can be difficult to talk about, and to let you know you're not alone. And then with that education and information, empower you to seek help. Seek a way to change the situation you're in for the better, whatever that may be. So again, thank you for joining us today. And we're going to talk today about domestic violence. When we talk about the Suffering in Silence series, what that means to me, or what I'm trying to convey to you, is there's a lot of things going on in everyone's house, in everyone's relationship. And as I've learned through my years of experience and just life experience, you never know what's going on behind closed doors, ever. And sometimes that what looks so perfect and beautiful on the outside is not that beautiful and lovely on the inside, meaning relationships. And that's because most of us keep that private. We're not out in the street airing our dirty laundry, and we're trying to uphold that image, frankly, for yourself, your friends, your family, for maybe your job and reputation. A lot of valid reasons to do so, but in doing that, many times you can just be in agony and not then feeling you have someone to really open up to, because you're afraid, well, what if I let down this facade? What does that do to, our kids, our relationship, our reputation, etc. So there are a lot of reasons for this, and we all have things that go on in our homes and our relationships that no one else knows about. And one of those things, and one of the most dangerous things, are when we have issues of domestic violence. And domestic meaning it's your husband. You're in a romantic relationship. That definition has expanded over time because many people used to be just married. Well, you don't have to be married. And you certainly can be living together and in a relationship, and it does encompass sometimes other issues in stalking. But the physicality of domestic violence is what is, of course, the most dangerous. But it's usually not in and of itself the only thing. So I have had really the privilege to talk to many victims of domestic violence, many women who've been in that situation, who've been able to open up and share with me things that they thought they were feeling. And that gives me more of an understanding and the vocabulary to speak with you about this. And so I had someone tell me one time, if they just hit you, at least you do know that's wrong. And that is a very apparent thing. Usually, up until that point, comes a lot of emotional verbal abuse. And what is that? Like that can be, you know, the coercive control, cursing you out, calling you names, really belittling you to the point where you don't even know who you are, and it really begins to erode your self-esteem. And when that happens, when we are so ashamed of who we are and embarrassed, it keeps you from taking action, or it is one of those things because you become so just down on yourself. You believe what he's saying, and those words and insults just become so much a part of that relationship. And then many times upon that, then you have the physical violence. And those are just some of the things, you know, I thought about it today as we were preparing for this. And usually I do obviously look at, you know, what research, other cases that we've had, the law, but then also what's going on in, you know, in the world, what's in the news. And there was an article in the news that we'll of course post with this probably even before the video before we, you know, this is even aired, that you'll have seen that, where, you know, there was a rapper, Dr. Dre, and his wife are going through a divorce, and she essentially alleges in her pleadings the coercive behavior, the domineering behavior, and really that domestic violence that has been occurring for years. It's a long-term marriage. 24 years, I believe, in the article that I read. So this isn't something that really just happens once and people get out. It's really not that easy. And I know that there still is a stigma of, well, what's going on? You know, that, oh, she could have just left. Why did she stay if he's going to continue to treat her that way? And I just want you to know that your perception does begin to change when you're in that type of relationship. And for friends and family who are watching this and who may not understand why somebody's in there or have questioned them, that's just part of it. Like, again, it's not something that happens overnight. It is over time eroding a woman's self-esteem and her belief in herself, that one, she can even make it on her own, that she can leave safely. That is a very real issue that comes up with many women. And when there's been significant physical abuse, there is that adds another level of the psychological abuse as well, and fear, because you know what he is capable of. And that can make you more scared, and that can make it even harder to leave. And it may, if you're not in a situation like that, it's difficult to understand. And the best thing you can do is to help someone who may be in this situation is get them to a professional. And there's very many in this area and all over. There's certainly hotlines for domestic abuse, and there are shelters, and they have really good therapists, because they understand the psychology of where you are as a victim, and you don't want to remain a victim, and you are not comfortable with that situation you're in. However, you know what to expect. And I know that may sound strange to anyone who's never been in that situation or never worked closely with individuals and women in those situations, but it's very scary to know what's going to happen when you leave, if you leave. You don't know what that looks like. One, you don't know what he's going to do, because you know what he's been capable of in the past, and you certainly know what he's threatened. And you don't know how you're going to make it on your own, and whether it's just you or children, what is the family going to think? And so many times women are so also afraid, well, he's a powerful man, because this goes across all socioeconomic, religious, and educational backgrounds. That is for sure. There is not any way you can say, well, that wouldn't happen in that house. It does. And it is something that then sometimes when there's more status and power and your husband maybe an executive, own a business and, have powerful networking and friends, the big concern you have is, well, one, no one will believe me. And two, what does that do to him? Because there is this sick part of you that wants to protect him almost over yourself. And that's something that certainly I've seen many women go through in their thought process. And if there's children in the home, many times they fool themselves into believing that the kids don't really know what's going on, which is not true. They understand at a very young age that those situations and that violence, and then they tend to mimic that and or believe that's the way it's supposed to be, because that's who they model their relationships after, the ones closest to them, their parents. What did they see there? Unless they learned it was not healthy and saw a healthier relationship. But if you're in that, they see that, and it will become something that they very well may model or put up with themselves in those kinds of situations. And many times it takes the realization that your children are worse off if you stay than if you stand up and for yourself and really for them, because they're in this environment as well. Unfortunately, many women don't take action just to protect themselves or find themselves in a better situation. They really put everybody else first. And that could be, of course, very harmful in this type of situation, the domestic violence. So, what can be done? We've talked a lot, tried to explain a little bit of what I've seen in patterns and behaviors and how that feels to be in that situation. What options do you have? That really one of the first options, or something that can happen and could maybe give you relief the soonest, is what we would call an injunction for protection against domestic violence. That is not a criminal issue, and you don't have to have an arrest or a criminal history to move forward on a domestic violence injunction. It is public to some extent, but it provides you the most protection under the law for that type of situation. Because obviously we're not talking about a criminal situation. And if you are in fear for your life, and you believe that he will hurt you, kill you, will hurt your children, kill them, usually that's based on threats, a history of that type of behavior, and usually you will see, more often than not, substance abuse involved to some extent, just even alcohol, and that is a exacerbating factor, and that this happens more often, when your husband's intoxicated. And sometimes you're both intoxicated, and that does make it hard, because you think, well, I was drunk too, and what role did I play in it? Again, blaming yourself rather than stepping outside and seeing the situation for what it is. And the only way you're going to understand, is this something that should apply to me, the injunction, is talking to a professional, either in the shelters, maybe through the hotline. I'm not sure how much they get into that, but I would imagine they do, and or an attorney. And so that's the number one way you can seek some type of protection and begin to receive some relief, because then if it's granted based on what I talked about, being in fear, then your husband cannot come within 500 feet of you and be removed from the home. And that is not criminal. He's not being arrested. That usually can allow you the opportunity to gain a little more clarity, be a little bit more objective on what's going on, because you have space from it, and decide, is this something that we could work on through therapy? I know that there are so many therapists, psychologists out there, and who specialize in these types of things. And if your husband wants help, there's certainly help out there. I do know that, and many times it's anger management, but also intensive therapy. And then, or you're going the route of divorce, and with that, as then you can forever be separated. But many times I will have a conversation with somebody, and as we are going through that conversation and understanding their situation, it becomes apparent that there are issues of domestic violence. There are issues that cause me as an objective observer, because recognize when you're speaking with a counselor or an attorney who has experienced these issues, when we are talking to you, we see things so much more objectively, that we're able to clearly help you maybe understand your situation a little better and how serious it truly may be. And so therefore we may direct you in the way of that injunction for protection. And it's very specific on what is going on in your life, very fact specific. There are many common things, like I talked about, or many examples of behavior that you'll see, such as usually there's substance abuse. Sometimes there's the threat of weapons. That always definitely, gets my attention and really gives me concern, because of course the last thing I want is something to happen to you. And in recognizing some of that, and to be able to tell you, okay, that's not normal behavior. Anger is normal, and people get angry and emotional, and certainly during disputes in a divorce. But this is a little bit elevated to the point that we think we should explore that angle. So those are the types of conversations that you would expect to have with your attorney as you're going through that. And, yes, there are shelters, and sometimes that really is what needs to be done. And you need to remove yourself and your children from that situation as soon as possible. And thankfully, the shelters are open. Obviously, in the times that we're in now, it can be a little bit more uncertain. But yes, they are, and there are places for you to go, even if it's just for a little bit of time, and to get clear on what to do next. So if you are in this situation, one, I really thank you for listening. I mean, you should be proud of yourself for at least getting this information, because you may have heard it many times, but maybe now you're ready and in a strong enough space to take action to protect yourself and to move forward and move yourself out of that situation. You don't have to be a victim. You really can overcome this, be successful, and move on. But it all does start with you and taking those first steps. If you're listening and you think maybe this would help someone else, please share it. These are delicate issues, and very, very difficult for anybody who's a victim of domestic violence to open up and share this to a close friend or family member. And just understand that that's not because of you, it's because of what they've been through, and who to trust, and really fear of repercussion of your abuser and your husband if he finds out you said anything or what's going on, because control is a big issue in these types of situations and relationships. It's all about control, and knowing that you've taught somebody else, then they feel like they've lost control over you and your behavior. So those are some of the things that you can do. One is certainly reach out and determine if an injunction is good for you. What we'll do is I'll ask JD to certainly post the any hotline for domestic violence abuse, because they're obviously very different levels. But if you're in immediate need and this is a situation that you need out of right away, that is the best thing to do, because those individuals on the phone, they're trained. They're trained to ask you the right questions and give you assistance no matter what time of day it is, and and the weekend, and really help you make some positive moves forward. And if that's what you need, then that's the best thing to do immediately. And then after that, there's the shelters. There's certainly therapists and family law attorneys who do represent individuals. We represent victims in domestic violence injunctions, and just to educate yourself on what does that process look like. I will tell you, not every woman agrees to do that, and that's okay. It's your choice. No one's going to make you do it, but understanding what your options are is important, because then you can make the choice, and what you're doing is you're beginning to change that pattern where you've been in a relationship where you really haven't made the decisions. You haven't had control over much in your life, more likely than not. So begin to take back some of your control, and then you'll begin to feel again back to yourself, make better decisions, different decisions, so that you can change the trajectory of your life right now. JD will give you all the information necessary if you or someone you know would like to come talk to us and gain more information. And thank you so much for watching today. This is a very important issue, and it's really important to educate yourself and everyone you know, men and women, because that's the only way we can put a stop to this. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Heather, and to everyone who was able to listen in today for Family Law Fridays. Like Heather mentioned, I'll be posting resources of shelters and hotlines for victims of domestic violence on our Facebook, so be on the lookout for that. We hope you found the information today helpful and enjoyed the fourth part of this series. Please reach out to our office, as we are here for you, whether it's another topic you would like addressed or if you are looking for legal help. We're available by phone at 904-241-0012. Thank you, and see you next week for part 5.